So, I'm going to try and play Dungeons and Dragons at you for the next 10 hours. This isn't my first time playing Dungeons and Dragons. I usually play Dungeons and Dragons at least 10 hours a week, with no more than a dozen people, not including myself. And I'm going to walk you through your first 20 levels as a Dungeons and Dragons character. Little backstory here, Dungeons and Dragons is actually a non-monotheistic cult that actually worships Roman demons. It's kind of weird, but yet it's all people really want to do. I don't know why. It's also a very slow-paced game, or not a lot really happens. I get used to just waiting to hear me speak. It's Dungeons and Dragons for you. You're going to need to create a character in your imagination. Your choices of, your abilities are whatever you want them to be, For races, you can choose between human, dwarf, elf, gnome, half-elf, half-orc, or halflings. Not really a strict DM, so dungeon master. So I would let you choose something from the monster manual if you like. It's a lot different than other types of reading, such as poetry or just reading a story. Dungeons and Dragons is different. It is different. If you want to choose something from the monster manual, your choices are Aasimar, Aboleth, Aboleth Mage, Abomination. Actually, no, those aren't really choices. Well, I find the real choices. This is what it's like. You're just sort of being talked at, and it's like people are trying to force imagery on you by talking at you, and then they're saying that you do stuff. So I guess for your character, we'll just start by listing the base options again. Your base options are human, dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, half-orc, or half-elf. And the base starting class options are barbarian, bard, cleric, druid, fighter, monk, paladin, ranger, rogue, and sorcerer and wizard. And there are over 600 classes to choose from in expanded content. But why not just pick? Why are you going to spend so much time creating a character? I've seen people spend weeks creating their character. It's like, let's just get started. Why are you making it so terrible? Well, now you should have a good idea of what you look like in Dungeons and Dragons. Should have some sort of, you can be male or female, stuff like that. That make your character. Sit here and we'll watch you make your character, see if you do it right. So I'm going to be walking you through the world's largest dungeon. Millennia ago, the Celestials built a great dungeon. Within it, the Celestials erected mammoth walls, locks, doors, and traps. It warded off those who would enter, but also walled in those who would escape. It was a dungeon larger than any ever known. Within it, Celestials imprisoned hellish undead, demonic beasts, and fiendish monstrosities. It was a perfect construction. Before the first dwarf would ever be born to sculpt stone, angels and celestials carved a work of art that no one would ever see. Perfect in every detail, it would stand inviolate for thousands of years, but none can say why the gods ordered demons and liches to be entombed and not destroyed, and in time the gods would true their merry. Yes, the gods would true their merry. Therefore, it is our contention that lichen, dire rats, goblins, and dire boars make for an excellent food chain. That's what it's like when you have a store-bought campaign instead of making one yourself. Sure does make me think about a lot of things, Dungeons and Dragons. Makes me think about voices and their effect, and it makes me think about writings and text and maps and lines and illustrations, and how long do you keep a steady state trance state imagining fantasy realms. So you don't know how, but you've been teleported into a bunch of snowy mountaintops. Right above you is the sun, and it doesn't look like where you are. There is a day and night cycle. There is no day and night cycle. The sun is directly above you, and the clouds move around it sideways, circling the sun like a vortex or a whirl. And when you look around the horizon, you see it's mountaintops in all directions, a bunch of snowy mountaintops, and you're on the highest mountain right now. You're climbing a mountain. As you climb the mountain, rocks and debris slow your ascent. Numerous tracks of different creatures ascend the hillside. You slay all the creatures you encounter either by sword or some other melee weapon or a ranged weapon like a bow or a crossbow, or you use magic to slay them. You see a man dead, the size of a galleon, a big medieval warship. I don't know if they still use that term, galleon. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I've seen that word used a lot in RTS games. The man is huge, like I said, the size of a galleon. He's already dead, and he is blocking, or no, he's not blocking, he's just next to the entrance to into the mountainside, a giant gate. Giant gate. Or no, actually no, it's just a protruding into it's a cave entrance, is what I meant to say. And I am doing the worst job of playing Dungeons and Dragons at you into the camera. So you search the giant to dead man, and he doesn't really have anything on him, but his pockets are filled with a bunch of notes of weird, arcane, maybe not arcane, but runic symbols, hard to describe lines, thousands of pages in his pockets, like an entire library's worth of scribblings, all in his pockets. And you can't make any sense of any of it. The giant man is already dead, and all he had on him was a bunch of scribblings in his pockets. And there's nothing of value. This is actually more fun than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to have a bad time, but as it turns out, we seem to be enjoying ourselves. You enter into the tunnels, not afraid of anything you might find. You're level 1 now, but after seeing that giant dead body, all of the adrenaline pumps through you, and you level up. You go to level 2 of your standard generic class that you chose, whether you are male or female, human, elf, dwarf, halfling, gnome, or half-orc, half-elf. That about covers it. Though I would have let you choose anything from the monster manuals, so that you could have just been a monster going through all this, slaying everything. So there's a single cave entrance, so you will be entering into the cave. You go into the tunnels, they wind deep down into the earth. You're going deep into the earth. You've been going through caves for a long time now. The cave is low and shallow, obviously dug by small, crude hands. Many footprints mark the dirt, and debris litters every corner. In the back of the cave's narrow tunnel, poorly lit, leads deeper. You explore the tunnel more, and it leads deeper. The tunnel winds into the mountain, its ceiling some 6 feet high and 5 feet wide at the widest. After about 100 more feet or so, the tunnel opens into a larger room, cut from stone and built rather than dug. It's obvious that something lives here. You're at a metallic gate, and you open the gate and enter into a large room with a swirling magma lava flow in the middle, or at least that's what it looks like, and there's fire, and you hear screeching noises coming out of it. The lava flow is in the center of the room. The flow of molten rock meanders to the southeast, consuming all it touches. Bubbling up from the flaming river are occasionally pockets of scalding steam, shrieking and moaning, disrupting the earth's quiet. Though the flow is indeed hot, it is bearable, and when you watch the floating bits of rock flare into flame, you can see multitudes of small imp-like creatures playing in the steam, tossing balls of flaming slag at the dancing clouds playing on the fiery river's surface. You walk by the magma flow. You might have noticed that that wasn't an ordinary magma flow. That was actually a tear into the elemental plane of fire. You advanced 2 levels and are now level 4. Things are getting more serious now. You move into the next room. A thick layer of dust covers the floor as 2 toppled pedestals and the shattered fragments of a marble statue of an elf lie in the center of the room. As you watch, the marble head shifts slightly and its eyelids flutter open. It stares at you with startling blue eyes for a moment, and then the eyelids close again. This room contains the remains of the victim of an ancient trap. The trap is no longer active, and the only thing the elf can do is shift her face slightly. In the next room, an inch-thick layer of muck covers the floor of the room, and a dozen closed doors dot the exterior walls. Deeply charred runes in an unknown language mar the center of each granite door, and geometric mosaics of green, red, and yellow tiles fill the area between each door. The ceiling is covered in bronze discs, each 6 inches wide. The majority of the doors are false doors. The runes and mosaics were once traps, which released streams of acid from the ceiling and fired lightning bolts from the runes. But these traps failed centuries ago. In the next room, the walls and ceiling of the room are featureless, but hundreds of metallic chain links lie scattered upon the ground. Enormous anchors and segmented plates jut the floor. The prisoner held within this room died centuries ago. All that is left are the chains which held him, corroded by his evil. In the next room, scores of motionless gears, cogs, chains, and metallic lengths fill this chamber, leaving barely enough room for a human to squeeze through it. Silver inscribed etchings and each mechanism crackle with a feeble electrical charge, but the room conveys a sense of frustrated power and intricate design. The room once maintained several magical fields, but the mechanism failed centuries ago and energy dispersed. All that is left is some resonant magical aura that makes creatures nervous and edgy. In the next room, thick cobwebs obscure vision beyond a few inches, but a harsh buzz echoes from the interior of the room. Tiny spiders scatter before your light and disappear into the web's depth. The stench of rotting meat wafts through the close air of the chamber. The only thing within the room is a rotting corpse of a demon killed centuries ago. Its body constantly regenerates, damaged at the same rate that it decays, maintaining a perverse stasis. The body is home to thousands of flies, beetles, and vermin. You may kill all the flies and vermin for XP. You go up a level. You are now level 5. In the next room, the stench of death pervades this chamber. The air is thick, and a fine cloak of dust covers the stone floor. A painting depicting a large woman in elaborate pink robes hangs in the center of the north wall. Under its large wooden coffin, its lid has been smashed open, and its wood has rotted. A closer look reveals the skeletal remains of a humanoid inside, buried with his clothes and sword. The human comes alive, or the skeleton animates and attacks you. You defend yourself against the undead and slay or destroy the undead creature, gaining some XP. You may put the painting and the sword and shield that the undead was using into your inventory. The remains are those of an orc male who died ages ago. While it's not obvious what he died from, he was buried with his belongings, suggesting he was a man of importance. Treasure in this room. The painting portrays an unknown woman, though not of particularly high quality. it is ancient and thus worth over 100 gold pieces. The clothing is rotted and useless, but the sword is masterwork quality and requires a good cleaning and sharpening. It is possible that the orc was burned with a few other items, including one minor magic item, not a potion. In the next room, this room is devoid of decoration, but its doors are framed by heavy stone structures sculpted with runes and intriguing patterns. These intricate frames are beautifully crafted but otherwise ordinary. The runes are decorative and not of any known language. An angel sculptor fashioned the beautiful door frames of this room, which housed Archon builders when the vast dungeon complex was created. A large stone desk dominates the otherwise empty room. An elaborate candelabrum of tarnished silver sits on the great desk, and 3 candles dimly illuminate bas reliefs on the walls representing the grotesque faces of demons, gargoyles, and other terrifying creatures. The carvings are so well done that in the half-light they seem real. The bas reliefs in this room were fashioned by celestial builders of the dungeon, adding art to the otherwise dismal surroundings. They represent some of the most fearsome creatures originally imprisoned with the vast complex, as seen by an angelic artist. This place is safe to rest for about 4 hours. If you rest here for more than 4 hours, you'll probably be attacked. You probably rest for more than 4 hours because you're looking for a fight. You have a random encounter, something from the monster manual, and you win. You get XP, but you still don't have enough XP to level up yet, even though you're already level 4 from walking. You've also been gathering enough loot so far that you have about as much loot or treasure as a 3rd level wizard normally would have. In the next room, the blackened remains of a great tapestry hang in the doorway of this chamber. Beyond the ruined tapestry is a dais bearing the massive throne. Both dais and throne are made from the dark gray stone, the same material as the walls of this foreboding place. The walls are darkened by soot, and the faint smell of burnt wood lingers in the air. This room once served as a meeting hall for the angel wardens. Under the leadership of their commanders, the angels discussed ways of improving the security of the dungeon. Demons destroyed this place centuries ago. In the next empty room, through the walls of this shockingly clean room are not exactly mirrored. They glimmer with dim reflections. The floor seems as spotless as the walls and doesn't seem to have accumulated any dust at all. There is a very large, round, invisible table in the center of the room, bolted to the floor. In fact, a physical inspection of the walls or floor proved that the room isn't quite as clean and spotless as it appeared. After spending an hour in the room, you become invisible. As you walk out of the room, you become visible again. In the next empty room, the pale brown walls, ceiling, and floor are covered with some sort of leathery canvas, though no means of attachment can be seen. The air is stagnant, and the odor of sweat is heavy in this room. A small, dark, irregular circle seems to be painted on the floor. At one time, this room was trapped with an incredibly complex and powerful spell, a last line of defense against a particularly nasty inhabitant of this region. The only remnant of the trap is the room itself, made up of the body of the creature that triggered the trap. The dark paint on the floor is actually a blood stain where the floor was once cut. It's only 15 degrees in the room. If you are not dressed properly, you might be shivering, unless you are a monk and have great control over your body. If you are a monk or just have a great fortitude or will save, you have the temperature does not affect you at all. In the next empty room, opposite the massive stone door of this hall is a 10-foot statue of black stone. The effigy represents a humanoid male, thick arms crossed across its a massive chest, though out of place. The statue is surprisingly clean and in good condition. Its pupilless eyes stare eerily at you. As you enter the room, statues of angels I did not mention come alive and attack you. You defend yourself against the statues, though they seem more difficult to slay with swords. But if you have specific magic or bludgeoning weapons, you might shatter them more easily. After a while, you probably succeed at destroying the things attacking you. The inanimate, magically animate statues of angels that attacked you. You destroy them, and you finally go up to level 5. In the next empty room, a small grove of trees surrounds the stone floor of this room, standing amidst snow-covered benches and a stone ball full of ice. The normal floor tiles of the dungeon give way to a beautiful wintry landscape. As you look up to see the top of a giant fir tree in the corner, the stone ceiling blocks your view. The scenic winter wonderland is real, created by an artist of unsurpassed talent. With several sets of marvelous pigments, the trees, though not alive, are real. The snow and ice are real. Anyone can walk among the trees and kick up some snow. There are no magical illusions in this room, but the walls are painted in such a way to trick the viewer's eye. You believe the room extends for miles, when actually it ends approximately 10 feet past the corner of the walls. You are safe right here. The optical illusion is perfect. You find creatures here, but they are resting. This is a safe place, and no combat happens here. You should be getting comfortable now, so you might want to grab something to snack on while I speak at you. You can't stay at the small grove of trees surrounding the stone floor, standing amidst snow-covered benches and whatnot on the ice. You can't stay at this tranquil place forever. You must depart. Otherwise, the story would just end with you being in that one room the whole time. So you leave that tranquil room that you felt like you could have stayed there forever. You leave there to continue adventuring in this horrible, celestial-built, millennium-old dungeon. This empty room has a dense fog. It fills the room, obscuring sight and muffling sounds. Footsteps can be heard walking away from the door through the fog. But beyond that, you find yourself completely isolated from the world around you. All the sound in this room is magically dampened past 10 feet. This means that you are venturing more than 10 feet away from each other, lose contact completely until they stumble upon each other again in the fog. The footsteps start and stop every few seconds and eventually lead to a door out of the room. It's almost like some unseen servant helped you get through the fog. You go into the next empty room. The interior of this room reeks of rotting flesh, and flies buzz loudly in the center of the room. A pile of charred wood is surrounded by 6 humanoid corpses. Another corpse lies on its side, partially leaning against the wall opposite the door. All the bodies are in similar states of decay and have been stripped of everything of value. So there's nothing of value in this room. The corpses are of 6 goblins that got lost in the dungeon and finally settled down here to rest before taking up their wandering again. Unfortunately for the goblins, the fellow on watch fell asleep and the whole group was killed by other inhabitants of the dungeon. We're having a really good time with each other, with the whole group. There's probably at least a dozen of us. Have you ever hung out with this many friends before? And we all have such great speaking roles, and we all entertain each other and ourselves. In the next empty room, the door to this room is locked. You can pick the lock, or you can break down the door. Break down the door. You break down the door. At the center of this room is a badly decomposed winged body, lays its arms, legs, and wings cast out to the 4 winds. The body has obviously been the target of violence since its death. The shreds of fine raiment cover the body, but all weapons, armor, and goods have been removed. Next to the body, writing been scratched into stone. Looks like some sort of winged being was tortured here to the point where it had to get its last words carved into stone with its fingernails. This was one of the members of the Celestial Garrison who was slain after the first earthquake. Before he died, he carved his last words into the stone floor. In Celestial, if you speak Celestial, I know one of you does. In Celestial, they read, Abasar of right host. I stood fast against the darkness and now traveled into the light. Let you who find my body carry on the fight in my stead. Alsar was slain and his corpse desecrated by the creatures of the dungeon. This is getting spooky. The floor of this room is missing. Instead, there is a pit of significant depth, at the bottom of which is nothing but spikes and corpses. The walls and ceiling are bare except for a few scratch marks. A foul odor indicates that the bodies have been rotting for some time. Who's ever leading, or in front, or taking point, as we like to say, springs a trap. First, a pit trap, and is now stuck in open position, very deep pit with spikes at the butt. Some of local residents use this pit for garbage disposal, particularly for the bodies of their enemies. Somehow, you make the correct save and get out of the pit trap, getting some XP or the close call. The air is extremely stagnant. At the end of this chamber is a door with an inscription. The door is abnormally warm, heat emanates from the room beyond, and you can hear the sound of fire and an odd whooshing noise after short but irregular intervals. The entire room, you open the door. The entire room is scarred black. After a few seconds in the room, it's entirely engulfed in flame, creating a whoosh noise as air rushes in to feed the fire. The process repeats frequently, rarely taking longer than a half a minute between bursts. Whoosh. Then a half minute later, whoosh. This room contains a fireball trap, but the trigger has malfunctioned, and now the fireball goes off at random intervals every 1d6 rounds. So it's not really scientific, it's random, the whooshing. Destroying anything placed inside. The vent for the fireball trap is set in the ceiling, and the lever to turn it off is on the far wall. If the PCs wish to cross the room, they must find a way to disable the trap without getting cooked. You try to disable the trap. It is incredibly difficult, but you succeed. The door to this room has long ago been splintered, and only a few scraps of wood hang from the hinges. The walls of this room are dominated by large wooden bookcases lined with scraps of paper, broken bindings, and other remnants of the impressive library. The bookcases have not fared much better. The entire room is ready to collapse. Once one of the libraries used by the Celestial Garrison, the room has been exposed to damp air of the dungeon and several species of paper-eating insects for the last few centuries. Now its contents are all but destroyed. Any human contact destroys the surviving books in this room, but there are few of those to be found. Most of the books in this room have long ago rotted away, so there is nothing of value in this desecrated library. While no heat radiates off the walls of this room, the walls are constantly bathed in fire. A ring of red and blue flame coats the walls and floors, turning the stone black. The wall of fire is an illusion. You walk through it. It produces no heat and cannot harm you. However, if you believe it's real, it does 2d6 plus 11 damage to you, fire damage, like a real wall of fire would. You see that the walls are clean and the fire hasn't touched anything. So you move through the wall of fire spell, because it was an illusion. The wall of fire was an illusion. It wasn't really there. In the next room is a vampire tome. Your entrance awakens the vampire. The vampire attacks you. Boss battle. After hours of combat, you eventually get the upper hand on the vampire. You slay the vampire, but it regenerates. You have to find the vampire's weakness to kill it completely, otherwise it'll just keep on coming back to life. Maybe you light the vampire on fire, or know a sunlight spell, or have a silver sword or something, but somehow you kill that vampire. You go up a level. You're like level 6 now? Level 6, you're almost a badass. Almost. Now that you're level 6, it's a good time to stop and think about everything you've accomplished in this adventure before you enter into the really deeper parts of this horrible dungeon built by celestials and archons and deities. Maybe this is a good place to stop. You're entering into an entirely different part of the dungeon now.